The first police siren didn't just interrupt the wedding. It shattered it. Not softly, not distantly, but loud enough to slice straight through the vows, through the music, through the fragile happiness floating in the warm evening air. At a luxury vineyard just outside Sonoma, 200 wedding guests froze as red and blue lights washed over white roses, ivory tablecloths, and crystal glasses filled with champagne. The soft golden glow of string lights suddenly felt harsh, exposed, like a secret dragged into daylight. The violinist stopped mid-note. The officiant's mouth hung open, words unfinished. Laughter vanished. Conversation died. Even the wind, which moments earlier had carried the smell of grapes and fresh bread, seemed to stop moving. At the center of it all stood the groom. Still, calm, unmoving. Nathaniel Brooks. Tailored black suit. Silver cufflinks. Hands folded neatly in front of him. Across from him, the bride, Emily, clutched her bouquet so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Her smile hadn't faded yet, but it trembled, confused, fragile, like glass about to crack. "What is this?" someone whispered. Before anyone could answer, the siren cut off. Doors slammed. Boots hit gravel. Officer Ryan Cole didn't pause to assess the scene. Didn't ask a question. Didn't look at the terrified guests, the crying bridesmaids, or the groom's mother gripping the edge of her chair as if the ground had shifted beneath her. He walked straight toward the groom. Purposeful, confident, certain, as if this moment belonged to him. Two more officers followed behind, hands already resting on their belts. Cole grabbed the groom by the shoulder, hard, then shoved him forward and slammed him against the hood of the patrol car. Metal clanged. Emily screamed. Gasps rippled through the crowd like a wave crashing through silence. Phones came out instantly, dozens of them, raised not just in curiosity, but instinct. Everyone knew this was wrong. "No, no, no, please," Emily cried, dropping her bouquet as she rushed forward. "That's my husband. What are you doing?" Cole didn't look at her, didn't slow down, didn't explain. He yanked Nathaniel's arms behind his back. Cold steel cuffs snapped shut around his wrists. The sound echoed far louder than the siren ever had. The groom didn't fight back, didn't yell, didn't resist, didn't even flinch. He turned his head slightly, rainless eyes calm, measured, and met Officer Cole's gaze. "Officer," he said quietly, voice steady despite the pressure on his back. "Are you absolutely sure you want to do this?" Ryan Cole laughed. Not nervously, not unsure, but with the confidence of a man who believed the uniform made him untouchable. "I don't care who you think you are," Cole sneered, tightening his grip. "You're going in." A murmur spread through the crowd. "This is insane. He didn't do anything. Is this a joke?" One of the groomsmen stepped forward. "Hey, this is a wedding. At least tell us what's going on." Cole spun toward him. "Step back, or you're next." The groomsman froze. Emily fell to her knees beside the patrol car, sobbing now, hands shaking as she reached for Nathaniel's fingers. He squeezed her hand once before Cole shoved him away. "Emily," Nathaniel said softly, "listen to me." She looked up, mascara streaking, eyes full of terror. "This is going to be okay," he said. She shook her head. "No, it's not. This isn't okay. This is a mistake." Nathaniel gave her a small, sad smile. "Mistakes can be corrected." Officer Cole scoffed. "You talk too much for someone in cuffs." He shoved Nathaniel into the back of the patrol car. The door slammed shut. And with it, something else closed, something invisible, but irreversible. Inside the car, Nathaniel sat upright, hands cuffed in front of him now, breathing slow and controlled. Outside, chaos erupted. "What's the charge?" someone yelled. "Show us a warrant," another demanded. Cole ignored them all. He walked around the car like a man who had already won. "Anonymous tip," he announced loudly, knowing cameras were rolling. "Felony fraud. Identity manipulation. We'll sort it out downtown." Emily staggered to her feet. "Fraud. He's a federal." Nathaniel shook his head slightly. She stopped. He didn't want her to say it. Not yet. Because if she did, the truth would change everything. And not in a way that would protect anyone. The patrol car began to pull away. As it did, Nathaniel leaned forward slightly, voice calm but firm. "Officer Cole," he said. Cole paused. Turned back. "What?" Nathaniel met his eyes through the glass. "You should call your supervisor." Cole laughed again. "Why? You gonna threaten me now?" "No," Nathaniel replied. "I'm giving you an opportunity." The car door slammed shut. The engine roared. And the patrol car drove off, leaving behind a vineyard full of stunned guests, a bride collapsed in tears, and a trail of blinking red lights fading into the dark. No one spoke for several seconds. Then whispers. He looked composed. That cop didn't even hesitate. This is going to blow up. Emily stood slowly, shaking. Her mother wrapped her in her arms. What are we going to do? She sobbed. Emily wiped her face, and for the first time, her voice hardened. We wait, she said. Because Emily Brooks knew something Officer Ryan Cole didn't. Nathaniel Brooks wasn't just her husband. He wasn't just a man in a suit. He was a sitting federal judge. And every second that patrol car drove forward, it was driving straight toward the end of Ryan Cole's career. Because somewhere, far from the vineyard, alarms were about to go off. Phones were about to ring. And men who didn't wear uniforms, men who didn't laugh, were about to start asking questions. And when they did, Officer Ryan Cole would realize something far worse than arresting the wrong man. He hadn't arrested a citizen. He had arrested the system itself. And the system never forgets. Judge Nathaniel Brooks had spent his entire life mastering one thing. Control. Not dominance. Not intimidation. Not fear. Control. It wasn't something he learned in law school. It wasn't taught in courtrooms. And it certainly wasn't inherited. It was forged, quietly, over decades of watching how power actually worked. At 41, Nathaniel Brooks was already one of the youngest federal judges in the district. Not because he chased prestige, but because he understood something most people never did. The loudest voice rarely holds the most authority. In court, he never raised his tone, never pounded the gavel, never performed for the gallery. He let prosecutors exhaust themselves with dramatic arguments. He let defense attorneys talk in circles. He let witnesses reveal themselves through impatience. Then, when the room was tired, when egos had spoken themselves empty, Nathaniel Brooks spoke. Measured, precise, unavoidable, and the room listened. Senior attorneys learned quickly not to interrupt him. Young clerks learned faster to take notes. Even seasoned prosecutors felt something tighten in their chest when Judge Brooks leaned forward and folded his hands. Because when he asked a question, it wasn't curiosity. It was confirmation. But tonight, Nathaniel Brooks wasn't a judge. He wasn't wearing robes. He wasn't seated behind a bench. He wasn't controlling the pace of justice. Tonight, he was simply a groom, standing beneath hanging lights strung between vineyard posts. Warm bulbs glowing softly against the California dusk. Rows of grapevines stretched behind him like silent witnesses, their leaves rustling gently in the evening breeze. His suit was tailored perfectly, not flashy, not loud. Black, clean, understated. The kind of suit that didn't beg for attention, yet somehow commanded it. Across from him stood Dr. Amara Lewis, the woman who had undone him in ways the law never could. Amara wasn't impressed by titles, wasn't intimidated by credentials, wasn't swayed by status. She was a trauma surgeon, decisive, relentless, unafraid of blood or truth. The kind of woman who looked directly at broken things and fixed them without apology. She smiled at Nathaniel now, bouquet resting lightly in her hands, eyes shining with a mixture of joy and disbelief. We actually pulled this off, she whispered, leaning in just enough that only he could hear. My mother hasn't complained in 20 minutes. Nathaniel allowed himself a genuine smile, not the polite courtroom version, but the private one, the one only a few people had ever seen. That alone should qualify this marriage as legally binding, he murmured back. Amara laughed softly. For a moment, Nathaniel forgot everything else. The cases waiting on his docket, the appeals, the scrutiny, the expectations that followed him everywhere. For once, the law wasn't on his mind. Instead, he noticed small things. The way Amara's hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but anticipation. The way the band adjusted their instruments nearby, murmuring to each other. The smell of fresh bread drifting from the reception tables. He felt present, and that was rare. Nathaniel Brooks had grown up learning to be hyper-aware. As a child, he learned early that being calm didn't mean being safe. That being polite didn't guarantee fairness. That silence could be interpreted as weakness, unless wielded correctly. His father, a public defender, used to tell him, "People will assume they know who you are before you ever speak. Your job is to let them be wrong long enough to reveal themselves." Nathaniel carried that lesson everywhere. In law school, where professors underestimated him until he dismantled their hypotheticals without raising his voice. In clerkships, where senior attorneys spoke over him, until his written opinions became the ones cited in chambers. In the judiciary, where critics quietly questioned whether someone like him belonged on the federal bench at his age. He never argued. He outperformed. And when he finally wore the robe, he understood something that terrified some and comforted others. Justice didn't need volume. It needed clarity. That same philosophy had guided his relationship with Amara. They hadn't rushed, hadn't performed for anyone, hadn't turned love into spectacle. They met at a charity fundraiser for underserved communities. He speaking about sentencing reform, she about emergency care deserts. He noticed her questions were sharper than most. She noticed he listened instead of waiting to speak. Their first date lasted 4 hours. Their second lasted an entire night. By the time they decided to marry, there was no drama left to resolve. No uncertainty to conquer. Just partnership. Nathaniel glanced at the guests now. Colleagues, family, friends. Some from his world. Some from hers. Some who understood exactly what he was, and many who didn't. He noticed a few unfamiliar faces near the edge of the gathering. People he didn't recognize from either side. His instincts flickered briefly, a quiet internal note filed and set aside. Not suspicion, just awareness. The band began tuning more deliberately now. The officiant cleared his throat. Everything was falling into place. And then, the siren. Sharp, sudden, violent. It didn't belong here. Nathaniel's mind reacted before his body did. Sound analysis. Distance. Direction. Close. Very close. Amara's smile faltered. Guests turned instinctively toward the noise. Conversations dissolved mid-sentence. A glass tipped and shattered against stone. Nathaniel felt something settle inside him. Not fear, but recognition. This wasn't random. The red and blue lights spilled across the vineyard like a stain, cutting through the warm glow of the ceremony. Shadows twisted. The illusion of safety cracked. Nathaniel exhaled slowly. Control. He turned slightly, scanning the scene with the same discipline he used in courtrooms. Officers exited the vehicle with confidence that didn't match the setting. No hesitation. No confusion. Intent. He felt Amara's hand tighten in his. "What's happening?" she whispered. Nathaniel didn't answer right away. Because in that moment, standing between vows and violation, between personal joy and public force, Judge Nathaniel Brooks understood something deeply unsettling. This moment was never about him as a groom. It was about him as a symbol. And symbols were dangerous things. Still, he remained calm. Because if there was one thing Nathaniel Brooks understood better than anyone in that vineyard, it was how power behaved when it thought no one was watching. And tonight, everyone was watching. From the road, Officer Ryan Cole saw something very different. A black man in a sharply tailored tuxedo, standing confidently beneath warm lights. A luxury vehicle parked just off the drive. Clean, expensive, unmistakable. A well-dressed crowd laughing easily, glasses raised, music playing softly. To most people, it looked like a wedding. To Cole, it looked wrong. Cole had been on the force for 12 years. Long enough, in his mind, to trust his gut more than procedure. He liked to say he had a sixth sense for trouble, the kind you couldn't teach at the academy. What he called instincts. Others called prejudice wrapped in confidence. He slowed the patrol car, eyes narrowing as he scanned the scene again. His jaw tightened. Too nice. Too calm. Too confident. In his head, the story was already writing itself. He reached for the radio. Unit 12 checking a possible disturbance at a private event. There was a pause. Static. Then dispatch answered, calm and bored. No complaints on record. Venue has a valid permit. Cole's grip tightened on the steering wheel. He didn't like that answer, because it meant there was no obvious reason to be here. And yet, he felt entitled to be. He looked again at the man in the tuxedo, the way he stood straight, unbothered, unafraid. Cole exhaled sharply through his nose. Yeah, he muttered to himself, already signaling his turn. Let's take a look anyway. So he drove in, not because the law demanded it, but because he wanted to. The band struck the opening notes of the first dance. A soft hush fell over the vineyard as conversations faded and phones lowered. Golden light shimmered off glassware. The air smelled like roses and champagne. Nathaniel reached for Amara's hand. She smiled, nervous, excited, glowing. For one perfect second, the world disappeared. No sirens. No uniforms. No assumptions. Just music. Then, feedback screech. The sound ripped through the moment like a blade. The music cut off mid-note. Laughter died instantly. Heels stopped moving. 200 heads turned at once. Officer Cole stood near the DJ booth, one hand on his belt, the other yanking the speaker cable free. The silence that followed felt heavy, wrong. "Party's over," Cole barked, his voice sharp and loud enough to carry across the entire venue. "We've had reports of suspicious activity." Murmurs spread like a ripple through the guests. "Suspicious?" Nathaniel released Amara's hand slowly and stepped forward, keeping his movements deliberate, visible. "Officer," he said calmly, voice steady. "I'm the groom. This is a permitted event. If there's a concern, we can resolve it peacefully." Cole turned toward him. His eyes swept Nathaniel up and down. The tux, the confidence, the crowd watching. Then he stepped closer. Too close. "Hands where I can see them." The tone changed instantly. Not loud. Not rushed. Cold. Amara felt it before she understood it. She stepped forward instinctively, lifting her hand slightly. "Please," she said, her voice shaking just enough to betray the fear. "This is our wedding." Cole didn't even look at her. He shoved Nathaniel harder into the car, metal rattling under the force. "Back up," he snapped, finally turning his head. "Or you're next." A gasp cut through the crowd. Phones came out, not for memories, but for evidence. Nathaniel's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "I'm complying," he said quietly. Cole didn't respond, because at that moment, everyone understood. This wasn't about noise. This wasn't about permits. This wasn't about safety. This was about control. And Cole intended to prove he had it. Nathaniel kept his hands visible. "I'm complying," he said evenly. Cole forced his legs apart and cuffed him. Hard. Pain shot through Nathaniel's shoulders. Guests cried. Someone shouted to stop. Phones recorded everything. Cole dragged Nathaniel past his own family, past his bride, and shoved him into the back of the cruiser. Amara collapsed into tears. And Cole, he felt powerful. At the station, under the harsh fluorescent lights, Cole finally opened Nathaniel's wallet. Not with urgency, not with concern, with irritation, like he was proving a point. His thumb slid past credit cards, past a driver's license. Then, he stopped. His expression changed. Not fear yet. Confusion. A heavy badge rested in the leather fold. Not plastic, not cheap metal. Gold. Solid. Official. Federal credentials. Judicial security clearance. A U.S. Marshal contact number printed where no civilian ID would ever dare place one. For a brief moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. This was the moment it should have ended. A smarter man would have closed the wallet, cleared his throat, unlocked the cuffs. A smarter man would have apologized, quietly, desperately, and prayed no one else had seen. But Ryan Cole wasn't smart. He was stubborn. And worse, he was already too deep. He scoffed, forcing a laugh that fooled no one. "Fake badge," he muttered, tossing the wallet onto the counter like it offended him. "Nice try." Nathaniel didn't argue, didn't raise his voice. He simply looked at the clock on the wall and memorized the time. 10 minutes later, the front doors of the station opened. Once, twice. 4 U.S. Marshals stepped inside. Black jackets, gold lettering, calm, lethal professionalism. Conversation died instantly. Keyboards stopped clacking. Chairs stopped creaking. One of the marshals scanned the room, then locked eyes on Nathaniel. The silence wasn't awkward anymore. It was terminal, and Ryan Cole finally understood. That badge had never been fake. It had been a warning. The video didn't spread slowly. It exploded. Within hours, clips of the arrest flooded social media, slowed down, zoomed in, replayed from every angle. Comment sections caught fire. News channels looped the footage nonstop. Millions watched a man misuse authority in real time. The city tried damage control. Statements were issued. Words like protocol and misunderstanding were thrown around. None of it worked. The lawsuit took 11 long months. 11 months of depositions, subpoenas, expert witnesses, replayed footage that only looked worse every time it was shown. Officers testified. Dispatch logs were examined. And then the body cam audio was played, the part that was never meant to be heard. The tone, the language, the intent. The courtroom went silent. When deliberations began, no one expected them to take long. The jury returned in just 4 hours. Their decision was unanimous. The verdict was devastating. Heavy checkmark unlawful arrest. Heavy checkmark excessive force. Heavy checkmark civil rights violation. $800,000 in compensatory damages. Then the number that broke him. $5 million in punitive penalties. Not paid by the city. Not covered by insurance. Personal. Permanent. Ryan Cole wasn't just fired. He was erased. His badge was gone. His pension destroyed. His future chained to a debt that would follow him for the rest of his life. Every paycheck. Every job. Every year. The system he abused finally answered back. Nathaniel Brooks made one final choice. Every dollar would fund a legal defense organization for victims of police abuse. The man who tried to humiliate him would now spend his life financing justice. Nathaniel Brooks was elevated to a higher federal court. Respected, composed, unbroken. Ryan Cole. He worked nights unlocking impound gates. Power didn't disappear. It simply changed hands. This wasn't just a story about a bad cop. It was a lesson. Power without accountability always collapses. And the law, when used correctly, always remembers.